pop into my head as I was walking down one of these logging roads. Nothing in particular or specific to that per se, but it was an idea as I was listening to a podcast about critical thinking and how we've lost a certain capacity of it. And these days, discussions in the mainstream and those talking heads that get any screen time in front of the eyeballs of millions use logical fallacies and circular logic and just terrible communication skills to get across ridiculous ideas that are reduced and pulverized and mere shadows of something that is more important or more accurate. Things that are political and charged and trending, things that are hot button topics and forced into the public consciousness to push certain ideas and certain narratives to keep people on their toes, keep people infighting and arguing about absolutely nothing of reality, nothing of consequence, nothing that probably even exists in the world. These made-up conflicts and made-up wars and such, and these bombings and all the rest of it, just total complete nonsense, just for visuals and optics and narrative manipulation, not actually presenting anything that's real or true, just repeating and regurgitating the same old stupidity that's going on for decades and generations, possibly centuries. It's the same script that keeps getting played out in the public consciousness. So the idea that popped in my head was one around the corruption or capture of the soul of the world. For whatever reason, that's just the phrase that popped into my head. So I wanted to maybe talk about that and see if something of interest might come up that I could share with you, the listener, and the observer and the viewer of this content. And if you like what I'm putting down, feel free to subscribe and share it with others. I've tried to make it easily accessible in multiple formats and services and such. The most fundamental or basic idea of it is that idea of corruption, especially institutional corruption. And when we're talking about the capture or the co-opting of the soul of the world, we can't not discuss the idea of institutional capture and corruption. Because, I mean, look at the world around you, look at what it's presenting. Virtually every institution that we rely upon for our framework of reality, for our comprehension, learning about and establishing what is real and true about this world and our place in it, all of these institutions have gone down a certain road, a certain path for a long time now, perhaps generations. And, that many could argue fairly that they've lost their way. And a lot of what is real and true has been inverted. And then this is perpetuated and proliferated and propagated through these institutions that they outline and frame our reality, but also maintain and devise the foundation with which we build our understanding and knowledge, and the foundation with which we form our ideas of what is real and true about our realm, about our life, and about our meanings and purpose. It's the foundation of our epistemology, our ontology, etc. So in these systems and these institutions, fundamental to how we understand and comprehend and derive meaning from reality, when they're all corrupted and captured, we don't know what we don't know. And I think we're coming to the end of an era. Many would probably agree. We're coming to the end of a certain epoch wherein that inversion is plain as day. People are seeing through it at every turn. They're seeing through these fake, false flag events that are happening around the world at all times. They're seeing through they're not buying, even in their own backyard, the riots and these protests and nonsense that are propagated and polluted by paid actors. You can see that these provocateurs are installed and introduced into every camera angle that's going to be pushed and promoted into the public consciousness through media, through the news stations, and through social media, taking things completely out of context. But they're also completely fabricating these events with green screens and AI and the rest of it too. And I think that's one of the benefits of something like AI exploding onto the scene, is this knock-on effect of us making conscious what was unconscious, us altering our perception of reality, in that because there's so much fakery, because AI is so good at being creative in the way that is almost real, that is almost believable, that is almost legitimate, it retrains our eye and our perception of these things so that we're no longer accepting of these projected ideas, these forced narratives, these manufactured crises. So I think while on the one hand people are pushing the whole freaking out idea of AI taking jobs and upsetting industry and upsetting commerce and becoming some sort of computerized overlord bullshit, at the same time it's also spurring this shift in consciousness, because just as it is with everything else in this realm, that mirroring effect is something that we, on some level, individually and collectively generated for ourselves, right? I talked about the Trickster in a previous video, and this polarizing figure that appears both, again, individually and collectively, individually, socially, in a nation, internationally, civilizationally, these forces that, of course, only exist because we exist. These counter-narrative, these counteracting, mirroring shadows that are absolutely essential to us to collapse these false narratives and to better perceive what is beyond that facade and that false narrative and the fabrication and the manufactured stories that they keep trying to pound into our brains 24/7 through every screen, through every media form that exists. So it seems evident to me that we're nearing the end of that particular cycle. Perhaps, maybe that's just wishful thinking, but the fact that every single institution that we rely on that has helped shape our societies, our cultures, our nations, our concept of what it means to be, what it means to be human, what reason we even have to exist in the first place, whether it's education, finance, government, food, energy, all of these mainstays that we rely on to exist and to build lives and build our infrastructures and to build our internal structures and frameworks. And of course, the corollary in industries and the industrial complexes of the military industrial complex, the medical industrial complex, the informational and intelligence industrial complex. And of course, there's the technocracy, the technological industrial complex, all of these things that have been well and truly corrupted to the core and are introducing, divisive ideas and combative notions and polarizing messages and narratives. All of them have proven themselves to be completely unreliable in the sense of being pro-human, pro-humanity, pro-civilization, and in service of civilization, humanity, and the proliferation of the human spirit, and providing for us organic human beings what we need to not simply survive, but to actually thrive and to unite and to be in harmony and all the rest of that. So if we're coming to the end of an era, an epoch, a yuga, a cycle, wherein the inversion basically reveals itself for what it is, as, any apocalypse would provide, right? The great revealing, the revelation. Then what comes next, If the entire soul of the world has been captured and co-opted and corrupted, we made that happen on some level, even though it's extremely difficult to want to take responsibility at that level. I mean, this is a cosmic sort of viewpoint, perhaps, that very few of us would be able to contend or collapse down into our single human mind's perspective. But in the grandest sense, we are collaborators in all of these things, co-creators in the grand story, as well as our individual story. So now that we're seeing the unraveling, the revealing, the apocalyptic narrative collapsing in on itself, that we're seeing with new eyes due to the fact of this persistent and aggressive mirroring through technology and spirituality and other narratives that are allowing us to snap out of our sleepiness, as it were? Are we ready to reclaim that agency and that authority? Are we ready to step into that remembrance, into that understanding of who and what we are, which I say often, perhaps that's too vague or ambiguous a term. It's one thing to say and admit that the whole system is out of whack. It's one thing to say that the soul of the world has been captured and corrupted and polluted with some strange and dark and shadowy and satanic ideas even. It's another to claim responsibility and have gratitude for that on some level, and to really and truly step into that deeper knowing that's hiding beneath all that subjectivity. Can we well and truly stand up? Can we reclaim our position, as it were, in some sort of lawful speak? Can we retake that authority and, again, reclaim that agency? Are we willing to? Do we even want it? Because after generations and generations of being dumbed down, being poisoned, toxified through food and medicine, through our thought structures, through religiosity, through different spiritual movements that have come and gone, the New Age nonsense and all of these things that provided us some good information, some good ideas, but if we're awake and aware and on the process of actually seeking truth, we kept going, we kept walking, we kept going through those steps, and to admit we went down the wrong path, perhaps, to admit we were misled, to admit that now isn't true anymore. And so we again, okay, let's stand up and keep walking. What's next? What's the next iteration? How can I dig even deeper? How can I turn inward and actually sink into my soul and reconnect to what is authentic, real, true? Because there comes a time, both, of course, all of this mirrors in the micro and the macro. Whatever's happening in our individual lives is mirrored in some way in the collective, in the civilization, in the grand big picture situation. None of it is separate or disconnected. None of it is dissociated from what's happening within us, because what is the singular perspective and perception that we can't appreciate, understand, and comprehend but ours? What is the only perspective and perception and point of view that we actually know intimately? It's ours. We can't possibly know what anyone else thinks. We can take the ideas and opinions and perspectives of others in stride, but ultimately it is upon us to make that decision for ourselves, within ourselves, based on how we synthesize these ideas, these emotions, these notions, these perhaps years and decades and millions and billions of choices and data sets that we've taken and these experiences that we've had. How do we synthesize all that down into something useful and practical in the now, in the moment, for this particular inflection point, this transition point, this paradigm shift that's obviously individual first and then reflected in the collective, in the civilization beyond that we are participating in. So yeah, it's very easy to say it's all corrupted, it's all unreliable, it's all predictable, it's all dark and dastardly and rife with complicit characters and weak minds and cowards and the complicit who have, gone through the ranks, gone through the motions, and they've been indoctrinated in this way or that and don't know any other, don't know how to behave differently because they believe in a certain way. And the question, of course, is why do they believe that? And we know why. We can, in a linear fashion, deduce what somebody went through and what somebody experienced and what a human being may have been put through or put themselves through to come to certain belief systems and belief structures, right? It's a very logical and reasonable thing that we can deduce. But observing that and saying that it's all corrupt and there's nothing we can do is assuming, I think, the wrong mindset. And again, deferring that authority to somebody else and being reactive a reactor instead of a creator. There's a reason that these words and these letters jumbling around so easily, these words are related, and I've written about this recently and had some GPT chats about language specifically and spell casting and how simple, innocuous seeming words can be weaponized against us through subtle manipulations and the rearranging of ideas and letters and misrepresentation and dual and triple and, all these meanings that one word can have that can empower and disempower you in the same instant, whether you're listening to it or uttering it and speaking it when it comes to discerning and speaking your truth. So sure, it's been corrupted, it's been captured, it's been co-opted for who knows how long, and maybe it will continue to be so, because that seems to be something that's endemic to the engine of this realm. The trickster, that shadowy figure, that opposite, that yin-yang sort of polarity that I've discussed a lot in recent videos. It's something that is endemic to our realm, and so we need to respect it and accept it, but also remember that we are the initiators, that we are the starting point, right? We are the ultimate catalyst. We are the reality engine, as it were, the real organic one, not these artificial ones and these AI generated things, again, that have been most useful, I believe, in altering our perspective so that now we can see fakery even more obviously and more readily and more easily, because it is so easy to do with a basic prompt to create a perfect lifelike sort of representation in 2D of something that could be real based on, all of human ingenuity and all of human knowledge, how AI works, pulling from that data field, that informational field. Whereas we, the human, the organic, authentic spirit and soul of this place, the whole reason that this realm even exists is for us to be able to experience and express in this way. We are the real engine, opposite the unreal engine, that can now so masterfully create artificial environments and 3D realms and an endless universe of stories and fiction and fantasy. We are the real engine. That's the unreal engine. But without us, that doesn't exist. And without that, our existence might be null and void as well. I mean, we need that counterpart. We need that counter narrative to our narrative. So I guess the main point, perhaps, and the way to end this particular thread is to say that corruption isn't going to stop. It's always going to be a possibility, a potentiality, because this place is essentially a anything goes sort of reality. I was speaking in a previous video about choice and free will. These are complex topics, but we reduce them and oversimplify them due to, emotionality and triggering effects, and of course, logical fallacies and other psychological games that we play with ourselves or are played by. So perhaps the more impactful or accurate, useful question would be, have you been corrupted? Are you corrupt? Have you been disingenuous, or have you been authentic to yourself, within yourself, with your friends, family, with the world, how you present and put yourself out into the world? Because if you're seeing corruption and darkness and shadow and evil everywhere, remember the mirror effect. And remember that ultimately this is a co-creation, right? Narrative, counter-narrative, yin-yang, organic, real engine, human, unreal engine, AI, and all the rest of it. The story, the soul, the spirit, and the trickster. It's all necessary in this place, so remember who and what you are. I guess to save and rescue the soul of the world, where else can that begin but within you, within us, within the individual? For what happens within will inevitably manifest without.
And everywhere you walk, everyone you see, brothers and sisters like you and me, gotta see the sun now.